Hello and welcome to This Contains Garlic. You are here with your hosts Georgia Garlic and
Mark Garlic.
and we are back for episode 8. Today we are talking about...
Menstrual cycles.
Oh, Mark was quick to jump in on that one. We're going to talk about periods and everything that comes with it, really. The enjoyment of having a period every month, and also effects it can have, obviously, throughout the month with training and nutrition, as well as how you manage sort of your working day.
And just general decision making when it comes to the changes and fluctuations within that period of the month, and how it impacts you both physically and mentally, and the observations we have as coaches when it comes to clients and their internal narrative.
Yeah, we mentioned
Just
this
in
before,
general,
actually,
when
on check-ins. Sometimes we obviously do weekly check-ins with our clients, and there is it's so obvious when it does get to that menstrual cycle phase, in the sense of menstruation or like luteal phase, that people's sort of mind automatically is very negative. And I do think this also starts and stems from like education at school, because women, in my opinion, should really be prepared for both menstrual cycles and menopause from a very early age, and we're never really ever spoken about with this, apart from like, here's a sanitary pad.
It's becoming more and more spoken about, but the information being put out is very good. But there are certain adjustments and certain self-care habits that can be added to ensure navigating the fluctuations of hormones, whether it's before menopause or after menopause, and during just normal menstruation, that help
well, I guess it
everything in terms of...
I don't really like to say that anything alleviates symptoms,
because, no, of course not. And obviously
a period for a woman, at the start of, obviously, like going into, teenage girl, going through those, it's one of these things which, until probably about a couple of years ago, has been quite a taboo subject, in the sense of like people willing to speak about them. And I think if you are in our industry, for example, and you are dealing with majority female clients, and I would probably make quite a big statement, but it's quite true for us, in the sense of our clientele, we work with pretty much like 85% women and 15% men. And, a lot of the time, women really do care about how they look and feel, and they can be very sensitive or hypersensitive to that. And so if you are a trainer or a coach or anything, and you don't understand that a client goes through this every month, and how that you can help them, you're effectively, you're not dealing with a male client. Let's just say that you're dealing with a female client that goes through these changes, and if you're not prepared with the knowledge, you're assuming that month, is going to go swimmingly well, and you're going to start to question when maybe things don't go as well. Or
I think, as you need to, like Georgia said, you need to be very as a coach, especially, be on the ball when it comes to expectations and programming / planning for a female client, because having high expectations at different phases in a woman's menstrual cycle, when maybe it's dietary, maybe it's the programming in terms of volume, this can come down to whether or not it's going to be successful and enjoyable for that female client, depending on what time of the month it is. So
as we said before, there are some people, we mentioned this probably on a previous episode, but every individual goes through different changes, in the sense of, obviously, every woman will go through menopause, every woman will have a menstrual cycle. Some people choose to delay it, some people choose to go on the contraceptive pill. But I think, in terms of GPs would normally put you on the contraceptive pill without addressing anything to do with your lifestyle. And it's one of those things that if you never have embraced your period, as much as we probably don't want to embrace the period sometimes, you're not going to understand how your body changes through that month, or how you can potentially manage it.
And especially if your journey is weight loss, and the fluctuations of weight as the
Yeah.
body regulates different hormones and different hormones become predominant. Your body is going to fluctuate. Does
Quite
that mean you're
heavily.
going to be putting on body fat? No, but then understanding when the body is potentially going to fluctuate helps you with your own internal narrative as a female or as a coach when a client comes to you and says, well, I've been adhering to calories and all the other self-care habits, but my weight seems to be going in the wrong direction.
Mm.
It's a coach can then sit down if and when they understand a client's menstrual cycle and sit them down and say, right, so statistically we might be in phase X. This is when we start to see an increase in water retention,
I think
and it
even though before
helps.
you get there, I think there's this really
Yeah.
important thing where before you embark on any journey, obviously we're talking specific to women here, but you know, I think that this education should be right at the fucking start. Like, you know, it should be something that is accessible for people to read into and have free resources on. And I
Yeah.
know now there are, but you know, you've really got to search for some, you know, some of it sometimes.
Yeah.
And especially with, like, you know, we said on another podcast that, you know, nutrition and exercise should be seen as a way of life rather than being implemented in. It's the same with menstrual cycles. There's no escaping it, you know, and being able to understand
Yeah.
that at certain points that you are feeling a certain way is a very powerful tool at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And being prepared. And I guess, you know,
And I guess we also need to touch on, like, there are some people, regardless of what they do, are always going to have
yeah, like me.
more adverse symptoms of hormonal changes than others.
Yeah,
Where
like
some people are, with some,
I've dealt with clients that
Yeah.
literally like just don't even get bothered
Yeah,
by
it's
it, you
like
know, and
not
they're
even
just
a
like, oh,
thing.
whatever. But I would say a lot more percentage-wise in the sense
Yeah.
of group would really go through some mega changes. Like I'm currently literally a couple of days out of mine, and I literally can't even like function properly in my head. And I know, and every single month I literally know, I'm like, I know I have this rage inside of me that suddenly just comes out, and everything annoys me. Nothing I can think clearly. I can't be decisive on things. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
all very flustered, and I know, I mean, like, I'm
Your
a
hunger
coach.
levels change
I've tracked this
dramatically as
period
well.
for years now, you know,
Yeah.
and I know that this happens, you know, every 3 weeks, that you're going to have the run up to obviously bleeding and feeling shit. But still, it does take you by surprise in a sense, because you just think, oh God, that's why I'm crying. Do you know what I mean? Like, literally, like it took us how many times to start this podcast because Mark.
It always
just-
takes us about 8 attempts to get things
yeah,
going,
but
regardless.
today was just on another level because Mark likes to wind me up, and I'm just not in the mood to be wound up right now.
Yeah, but it's so it's entertaining.
Okay, do not use my menstrual cycle for your entertainment, Mark, because otherwise you are not in striking distance, but the podcast will be ending right now.
It's good for the keeping spice in the marriage.
Spice in the marriage. Anyway,
Yeah.
I think starting with the fact that we're not going to go through every phase of your period, because as we said, you know, days can be different for every individual.
Yeah.
Some periods, you know, obviously
Some
research.
people have longer periods than others.
I mean,
some
like
people have
research
shorter.
says that some people start.
And there are some people that have polycystic ovary syndrome, for example, that might not have any form of menstrual cycle.
Yeah, and also those that have potentially lost their menstrual cycle due to either being, you know, there's a number
Medically
of
induced or...
but there are times with like periods where, you know, it gets, you know, symptoms become more heightened. It starts to very much affect your day-to-day life, and that's the period we're going to talk. Period we're going to talk about, and that tends to be the luteal phase, which is, you know, the end part of the cycle going into obviously bleeding, and this is the point and where we would see as coaches the most amount of mental change in a client.
Yeah.
And so I think most important thing that we get asked with periods is food. and nutrition and being able to adhere to
certain
potentially a
targets and
goal or
calories
target.
and
You know, as I
macros.
said, not all life is not all about targets, you know, and I would like to reiterate this. We're not going from this in a weight loss standpoint. We are going from this in a lifestyle standpoint.
Yeah.
But and understand,
Generalized.
yeah, we're not telling you that life needs to run by targets. So I just want to say
If
that
if you're that way inclined and that's what your goals are pointing towards, then obviously it makes common sense to just have some targets. But
but in the general
you
scheme of just living a healthy lifestyle, you know,
yeah,
it's still very
as hormones
important.
fluctuate, your dietary requirements and tastes are going to want to fluctuate, and every person's different. Some ladies go savory, some ladies prefer sweet, and this is when you start to statistically see a bump up in calorie intake because of those hormonal changes and shifts.
Which,
So,
just to
as a
point
coach,
out,
understanding a client's cycle, this is where you can start to implement different strategies, or if you're very target or goal orientated, you potentially can strip it back a little bit so that you can allow yourself some more dietary flexibility during that period of time.
yeah, I mean, as I would like to, you know, I was just about to say that, like, I wanted to point out that, you know, if you're spending, you know, large time, you know, say for example your goal is weight loss, then obviously you want to manage those expectations where you still want to adhere to something and understand it. But if you're doing it from a sort of way of life perspective and understand, you know, you want to make sure that your nutrition that you intake, you know, could potentially be seen as sort of like not 3 weeks on, 1 week off in the sense, but it could be structured in a way where you go in quite confident with the way you manage it. Now, it's always going to take you by surprise, as I said.
Yeah.
And with nutrition, when you go through the luteal phase of your period, statistically your body temperature will increase due to the fact, well, one, obviously your hormones are changing, and two, the fact that your BMR is obviously slightly increased, and your BMR is your basal metabolic rate, and this actually has quite a positive effect on what your, you know, food intake could be a day, because statistically, if you are at a higher BMR in the sense of, you know, expenditure intake, then you will be allowed to intake a little bit more food than what you're used to. So around your period, in that luteal phase, into menstruation, depending on how your symptoms are, you know, you could and can increase your calories by, on average, they say, I mean, between 200 to, I guess, 400, depending on the client and their journey and what's going on, calories per day. And so that can really help you if you are feeling like you're about to go, you know, sort of balls deep, not balls deep because we're not a man, but like, you know, we're going to go deep into the cupboard and get out all the biscuits. You know, you could structure in that sort of extra calories to allow for you to, I guess, not be so food focused the whole time.
Yeah, I think the main thing is also keeping it very simple and easy with regards to food choices. At that period of time, you see a lot of people struggle to make decisions. They find normal everyday tasks a lot more stressful, and the general narrative generally is negative. So you want to be able to set yourself up so that it's secondhand nature. You're not having to make hard decisions. You're not having to rely on motivation, and you're at least putting yourself in the best position to be positive or have
Yeah.
some progressive outlook on your self-care habits.
I just think that also though, like if you're not following targets and say you're not, you know, you're not tracking things currently, you know, there is always that thing where, you know, it's okay to have days where you consume more food. Like it's
Yeah.
totally, absolutely fucking normal. And there are going to be those times where you are never going to be 100% perfect with this. In no way is this podcast here to tell you, like, if you do it by X amount of calories a day, you'll be absolutely fine, nothing will affect you, you know what I mean? It's just here to say that it's okay, do you know what I mean, to you have gone over things, do you know what I mean? It's very normal when you are feeling quite brain fog, and you can't really think that clearly, to not make the wisest nutritional choices. And, sometimes we need to embrace that in a way. Like, as we said, if you have a very specific goal, then obviously you don't want to disappoint yourself 24/7 or make the situation that you've, achieved worse. But you're highly unlikely to really do that unless you are intaking vast amounts of calories per day. Like, as we say, your weight will fluctuate whether you've
regardless,
eaten, more or not, and that's something, my physique can go from looking like
and
something
it's
like
not
I
only
trained to not.
yeah, it's not only the way you look and feel, but it's also joint pain and overall pain in general heightens around the luteal phase. So you can maybe feel like it could be lower back, it could be your knees or ankles, or any joint that starts to feel impacted or heightened in terms of pain management in and around
I think
those
that's
hormonal
important when you're
fluctuations.
exercising. Say you're
Yeah.
exercising, whether it's lifting, running, anything that you enjoy doing in terms of exercise. There are times where you sometimes think like you feel like your body's pretty inflamed. You're like, I'm not really sure why. Like, why have I suddenly got hip pain? Or like, I get a really weird. I was saying to you earlier, Mark, I get this really weird, like dull, like jaw ache, and it's always around the time, and I can't work out, and then I've clocked it over the past few months what it is and why it happens. And sometimes you can be like, oh god, my hip hurts, and go and over fucking stretch and do all of this stuff, when actually it's just hormonal change. Yeah, hormonal. And understanding that is something which gives you the better, I guess, like step ahead.
I think I feel, especially working with loads and loads of female clients, it's providing an understanding which then helps to nurture an internal narrative. So if people understand, or ladies understand, why their weight fluctuates or suddenly goes up, even though that they've been being diligent with their exercise and their nutrition, and you're like, no need to be concerned. It's just hormonal fluctuations, or the reason why you're feeling this way, maybe physically or mentally, is it's coinciding with these hormonal adjustments. And then generally people are like, oh, okay, that's quite interesting to know, and take that into consideration going forward, which places a hell of a lot less expectation on the client or on on a female to be a certain way, or feel a certain way,
but
or
like
weigh
me
a
being
certain
a
weight.
female would say that sometimes you don't want to hear stuff like that, and it's fine. I just, as I said, like, it's better, in my opinion, taking a situation right at the start of coaching somebody, or right,
Yeah.
and so to say like, this is what's going to happen, rather than when we get to it, which is totally normal to navigate when we get to it. Like, oh, okay, you're feeling not great, remember, you know what I mean, like
Yeah,
X,
I
Y,
think
and
it's
Z.
very hard as a man who's never gone through a hormonal change extensively, apart from self-induced performance-enhancing drugs that, I mean, roid rage and things like that. Do I
Please
think
don't
those
even
are a
try and
thing?
compare.
Not really. No, but I'm just saying that's the only thing I can relate to.
Well, when
And
was the
that's
first
no.
time you heard, when was the first, no, you're going to be like, that's a really dumb question, but when was the first time
Yeah.
you had been told that women went through a period every month? Because you grew up in a whole family of boys. I doubt it was,
I'm trying to think now.
like, did you know that your mum went through a period? Not that, I mean, it's a bit
Yeah.
weird. Well, did
yeah.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I would imagine. Yeah, but like in terms of understanding anything outside of like no, like I would say yes and no at the same time. Yes in like a general knowledge sense, but no in any form of nuance.
Yeah, well, what age was that then? I just asked you.
I'm just trying to think.
When did you actually,
I
as
would
a
have been
child,
about,
did you know as a child? Did you know as a teenager?
no, I'd say from about 16 onwards.
Well, it's because you need to avoid getting a woman pregnant. That's probably why
Yeah, I
you
think
learned.
that's when you start to
That's the only
start to,
reason that
yeah.
fucks me off so much, that men will learn about it, because it comes down to, okay, well, just like, please don't do anything inside of her, thanks, because she could be pregnant. And when you get to age
I
15
think
or
you
16,
start to
it's
only
like,
twig onto that when you start, obviously you get to the age where you're sexually interested in the other sex.
well,
or
you
the
told
same
me you
sex.
weren't sexually interested in the other sex for many, many years
Yeah,
after
but it
that,
doesn't
Mark.
mean you can't have some level of general knowledge. Do you
Well,
know
that's
what
what
I
I
mean?
asked you. You just said you didn't have a
Yeah,
general
about
knowledge.
16, but I'm
But
saying
the
it
sad
becomes
reality
more
is,
prevalent when, as a young man, you start, like you said,
well, yeah, it starts when you
courting
start dipping it
a
in,
young
and you need to
lady.
be fucking responsible. Yeah,
Shoot on
like
past
that's
the goalie.
but I would say it is quite sad. But I would think that a lot of women wouldn't actually know about this stuff till much later in life as well. As I said, I was. Oh my god! I don't think even in biology we even really covered
there's no
this.
reliable source of information back in the day apart from glossy magazines, which are not reliable in
No, but
any
even
way.
when you had sex ed as a
But
girl
yeah,
at
they're
school,
not.
like it wasn't. It was more about like
No.
don't get pregnant rather than this is what happens to your body every month. I really don't remember anything being taught to us about, apart from like don't get chlamydia.
photosynthesis.
Literally, it was like, okay, that's cool, that's it, done
Yeah,
and
like
dusted.
I said, it was always
I would
just.
hope it maybe changed, but also periods are really expensive things. It really annoys me, and my sister has got her own company where she's developing everything for women, and she's done a lot of research in just period poverty, like worldwide, and the accessibility of stuff, even like tampons and sanitary pads for women. And it is one of these, in a lot of different cultures, it's not something that's spoken about. In the UK and the US, it's something that is more spoken about due to the fact that that's probably where most industry leaders and experts are coming from, in the sense of their worldwide research and knowledge. But it is one of these things where it gets a period, you need to understand these things from a young age. Like, we'll say this time and time again, it's like understanding how to get a mortgage or how to pay fucking tax, or I'm not saying that finance has got anything to do with menstrual cycles, but they should know.
It's not equally just for women, it's also for men to understand.
Yeah, but babe, when we were
because-
outside, did we not see those school children, those boys, like literally mouthing off at like the teachers? It was
Yes.
like, fuck you, you're sexually harassing me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they'd gone
But
and said,
that's-
why are you so... No, but imagine teaching a group of, you would say probably quite badly behaved boys at a certain age when you're growing up. Not saying that I was any better behaved, but
Yeah.
you as boys are more, if you went to an all boys school, imagine trying to sit down a boy in a class talking about, you can just imagine, oh, it's a fucking vagina. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
talking
It
about
would
vagina.
be, it would just be like, oh, vag, fucking love it. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be like, oh, okay.
Doesn't
so
mean that
women's
it
going
doesn't.
to-
It doesn't necessarily mean that it should be discouraged from teaching
Absolutely
both
not.
sexes the importance.
But you can see
of-
whether or not it's going to be productive or not. Like, I think in terms of a female understanding, first would be wise. But also, I would say from when you get older, Spain has just brought in a 3-day menstrual cycle holiday for every woman. That is the most fantastic fucking idea I have ever heard. And that, when you go and get employed, like I've worked in, most of my life has been in quite male-dominated industries.
Yeah.
Not only is the fitness industry, as much as you see a nice pair of glutes on Instagram 24/7,
more men
it
than
is
women.
more male-dominated. And so I've also, previous to this, worked in property, and that's also a more male-dominated environment. And I don't think those that employ you even understand, if they're a man, that the reason I don't know, maybe women are not that productive that week, or they can't hit their targets, or they're very stressed, or they feel like shit's hitting the fan. This
just
is
added emotions.
it should be known as employers. And if anything, when you have those sort of HR manuals, I'm not sure, because obviously we work for
I guess
ourselves, but
yeah.
I'm not sure what it's like now. I think some companies might be willing to,
hopefully.
Well, menopause is obviously another topic that we're definitely going to cover on a podcast, and that's something that is definitely being spoken more about in
definitely.
work environments, because of the women of those ages that statistically go through menopause later on. They're in sort of the pinnacle of their, career, and it's a really hard time to be able to manage. But it's exactly the same as if you are a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old woman who is trying to get somewhere in a workplace, and there is going to be that time or that week or a few days in the month where you literally don't want to be at work, or you can't function properly,
Yeah.
and you are feeling discouraged because nobody really else around you understands. So I think, everything that we're going, like, I would love to be able to see, like, in educational systems, like menstrual cycles and menopause, because this is stuff that is happening and will happen, being spoken about more, and not in the sense of like, here's how you put a tampon in an applicator. Do you know what I mean? It's not, we need to be understanding these changes that happen to us every single month, and so that we are prepared for year and year after for this to happen. But going on from that, I think it's important, as we said, we were talking about the nutritional part, and giving yourself that ability to have a little bit more food, or being able to increase potentially the foods you really want into your diet. But there's also some ways that you can manage, and a big factor that changes around your period is your sleep. And we were thinking, actually, maybe we'll do a podcast on sleep today, but actually we're doing menstrual cycles. But sleep is massively affected because of your increase in body temperature. It makes it much, much harder to not have a restless night of sleep. And that in its own right, lack of sleep equals hunger hormone havoc. And so when you are around your period, that's also another thing where if you can try and make your sleep environment as comfortable for you as you can. I'm talking, what would you say is sleep environment, Mark? Dim, cool environment.
Cool environment. Make sure it's cold, so round about 17, 18 degrees apparently is the
right now,
sweet
though.
spot, which would be quite difficult.
Like, we've
Then
got a
you
fan
need
blowing on us
a
now.
dark environment, so blackout blinds, limit your white light prior to bed, or stimulating content, so like social media or television or work.
And like, make sure that
A
maybe
meal before your sleep. If you're having huge meals just before going to bed, that's going to impact your sleep quality and duration, and your body cycling through different REM cycles. So you want to have your largest meal about 2 to 3 hours prior to bed for optimal sleep. And then you can also regulate your body temperature by having a hot shower pre-bed, because you need your body temperature to hit its lowest point for you to get full restorative benefits from sleeping in general.
Okay, but if your body temperature's increased, a way that you could manage that is, sometimes I don't want to have a hot shower, because sometimes that I'm already like having a hot flush. I don't need anything more hot around me. But I would say that potentially then you'd go in with preparing with like a lighter duvet, or just a
or a
sheet,
sheet
or
or
like,
something like that.
something where you're not then sleeping with your normal necessarily like accessories, we could call them, and actually you're preparing that you probably are going to wake up very hot. Like, I wake up probably 3 or 4 times a night when I'm around my period. It's very annoying, because that also has an effect on your the way your mind
and
works on a day-to-day
you'll
basis.
just wake up feeling tired, and
It's just when your alarm goes off and you literally just think, why? But these are the things with nutrition. Obviously, as we said, give yourself the benefit of the doubt.
Increasing your flexibility is probably the best thing that you can, because a lot of people, when they embark on a personal journey, we all to a certain degree feel or have some negative connotations towards certain food groups that are just ingrained in us from years and years of diet culture. So when you are feeling like you want to eat those foods, especially when it's cravings are increased, and then you feel like you need to restrict them because of those old diet culture narratives, when in reality you should either budget your calories if you're adhering to a goal, or like Georgia said, allow yourself a little bit of extra food so that you can include the things that you like and are craving during that.
And I also just want to say, like, there's so many people that don't track, and if you, as we said, like, if there is a weight loss goal, these are great tactics to bring in around your period. But if you are just living your life, then you know, you likely, as we said, taste buds will change, you know, so you can run with it. You know, it's not to say you can't eat nutritionally dense foods or like a good protein amount, but, you know, you also got to realize that I know diet culture has been ingrained in so many people, and I think that diet culture only really comes strongly out when somebody is wanting to lose weight. But if you're just living on a day-to-day life, you are on average going to be intaking foods that you enjoy and that we have accessibility to, which is obviously the convenience foods, what you could call as processed foods. I mean, every food's processed, but, you know, I'm talking refined and all of that stuff, you know, like the chocolate, the crisps, and all the things that comes with it. Like, as humans, we are naturally going to have that. Like, we are going to reach for that as like a bit of a comfort blanket. And I just, you know, as I said before in this podcast, like, don't feel like you can't change things up. You don't need to be regimented over your period as to what you potentially would be before. And also, you can just change up your nutrition. Like, most of the time they say, obviously, studies say to eat more protein around your period. But statistically, what the research also says is that women don't
choose not
to, because
they've just got no taste for it.
Yeah, like, why would, like, obviously I eat meat and fish, but sometimes I crave like a higher fat fish, like salmon, like, you know, but I'm not thinking about like some nice chicken or like a steak or anything like that.
No, more palatable foods or cuts of meat, or, you know, more calorie dense foods in general.
Yeah, and then sometimes I get, as I've said, I get weird fucking cravings, and that's totally normal. I normally embrace those cravings and eat exactly what I thought. Like I said in the previous podcast, like ham and cheese sandwich, that's like something that I just got to action. Do you know what I mean? So then I get it out of my head. But the food focus obviously is going to increase, and this is something that if you can try and manage it with the things that we've said, then you're going to be a little bit better off.
Yeah, I guess you couple that with increased food focus from hormonal changes, and you add in social media, which is obviously readily available to show you foods, highly palatable foods, that increases your food focus even further.
And just like to say, actually, it makes it really bad currently, because put it as a side note to menstrual cycles, but social media is now, obviously, their whole aim is the most engaging content. So if your content is not like incredibly creative or engaging, then like good luck. So food is doing, like, I am an avid food like follower on Instagram. It's a real issue when I really want something, but like I love watching things go from start to finish, and that's why I love watching food be created. But it is that thing where, like, if you're sat, it's like probably when you did a bodybuilding competition and you sit and you can't have something because you know you can't, and you go and watch Tasty's videos, do you know what I mean, of just like an Oreo milkshake with whipped cream.
All day, any waking moment you are consuming food.
Yeah. Like, you food, just want to, you just think about
just
food
all day.
And as I said, like, that's why I think it's important. Sometimes you give it to yourself. You don't feel like, you know, because that in its own right is quite restrictive, you know, saying you can't necessarily have something when actually you could just have it. You know what I mean?
But if you're in a prep for a show, you've...
Yeah, but if we're talking about a menstrual cycle and you deciding to step on the show in a tiny little pair of trunks.
Yeah, I guess we should also maybe discuss, like, obviously the loss of periods and menstrual cycles can come from, you know, reducing your body fat down to a point where you no longer have a menstrual cycle.
Like if you went on for bodybuilding shows, like I would say in sense of a challenge, like it's one of those things, barring the posing, because I physically just can't even look at myself doing that. I would probably have competed if there wasn't so many downfalls to it, knowing myself. Like, you know, I know that, like, from being previously very, very overweight, that going in and literally, because you're going to guarantee probably potentially lose your period. Majority of people we know that compete at a serious level have lost their periods. And not only that, it's that reverse out. And if you've had that mentality of an all or nothing approach, or, you know, that's when you're going to be like, okay, competing's not right for me. And that's exactly why I have never competed. But in the sense of the challenge, I've got it. But in the sense of what it could do to my body afterwards, maybe not. And that's why I think when it goes into, if you're thinking of competing, because we do get some people that ask us about this, as a female, please do it properly. Like, you
Yeah.
need a coach from weeks out, not just 8 like a man could do, 8 weeks out and just, roid yourself up. You need weeks and weeks and weeks in advance to not only have, to put yourself in the best position to be able to then reverse diet out of a show properly, rather than going and regaining shit tons of body weight and, potentially losing your period along the way. But also there's also a lot of women that don't have a period due to not competing, and it's due to maybe something medically that's happened, or
Could be environmental, it could be lifestyle, stress, it could be
stress is a big one.
a variety of.
But most of the facts come down to on your generalized, obviously please don't take this as if you are individually going through this, but a generalized thing is the fact that if your body fat levels are too low, you are at risk of losing your period. And so if you are in this position now, your best way is to start really being aware of how much food you are intaking, how much nutrition you can actually, get in your body a day, because that's, not always going to be the complete answer, but it would give you probably the result that you want, which is getting your period back. If you are and you haven't had a period, for a long time, and you haven't thought that potentially there is something up, I would just say maybe try and address it now, because the damage it can do to your body years down the line is quite huge on your hormones. So if you are sat listening to this and maybe you haven't experienced a period in a very long time, and maybe you are sat at quite a low body fat, like, look to reaching out. You can reach out to us. We can help you address, the start of trying to get that period back for you. Because, as I said in the beginning of this podcast, it's about actually understanding why we have a period, and, like, your body needs it, you know what I mean? And sometimes there's so many ways to stop periods now, and and people find it obviously sometimes nicer not having a period, but if you have lost it and it's not due to pregnancy or anything like that, then I would say to look straight on at your nutrition currently, to be able to help that. I think what we should go on to is actually training around periods, because I mean, obviously exercise is something that a lot of people do partake in on a day-to-day basis. What would you say that a client potentially experiences, or what would you say that you would program for a client coming up to period? Would you suggest for them to do less volume, or to keep, because the science says that statistically you shouldn't let go of the weight, not let go of the weights, but you shouldn't necessarily reduce the amount of weight you lift, especially throughout bleeding.
You just statistically, there's no drop in strength when the studies were conducted looking at the maximal, I think it was 1 to 3 rep max of certain compound movements, compared to when ladies at different stages within their menstrual cycle, and the study came to the conclusion that the relative strength and absolute strength remained relatively the same, and the best way to manage the menstrual cycle is to maybe adjust volume depending on the individual. So, like we said, this is all very individual depending on the person. One woman can have debilitating signs and symptoms, and one woman not so much. So it's a case-on-case basis depending on the individual from a coaching standpoint, and it's within the coach's due diligence to register and pick up these signs and signals from their female clients so that they can make adjustments to the periodization of their programming prior to, or not prior to, but during the coaching experience.
Yeah, I mean, like with training, I think the week before you start obviously bleeding is the time where your energy levels will have dropped significantly, and that's when you're going to fatigue a lot quicker.
So keep the weight the same and then drop the reps down a couple of reps.
I kind of think, as you said, the individual case, like with me, I probably wouldn't try to lift most, because I probably in my mind am telling myself I probably can't lift as much, or I feel very tired. And so I would rather reduce slightly the weight and increase the volume, being honest. Like yesterday,
But that is,
I
I
was,
hate to admit, but you are a statistical outlier when it comes to that. So like
well,
Georgia trains so hard
no, don't,
that
I'm
it
not some fucking
is, you do, you
psychopath.
train, no, not, I'm not saying you're a
Like, not to the point where
psycho.
it's too
I'm
hard.
just
Don't
trying
take
to
that as
give you a compliment
oh,
and say
okay.
that Georgia trains very, very hard. So just take
Very.
everything with you, what, like,
No, but I
your
was saying
average
yesterday,
individual
no, I'm not
will,
saying, but I have been an average individual
you
before.
have been, is in
Yes,
the
and so I
past
can see
tense.
both sides of it. Like yesterday when I went into the gym and I was training my shoulders, and I literally couldn't lift like half the amount of weight I could normally lift there. And that can feel quite demoralizing, carrying on pushing for numbers. So that's why I say that actually, even though you might be at your strongest or you could still lift it, if you're mixing in the likes of potentially inflammation around the joints at that time, combination of all those things where you don't feel like you're fatigued and you can't necessarily lift with the best focus, should you still be pushing for numbers throughout your period? Probably not. You should be taking yourself
But
into maybe a lighter.
some people would also like to lift a heavier weight just for less reps.
Yeah, but that's powerlifting. That's like one rep, drop it
No,
on the floor, you know? Like,
I
it's.
didn't say one rep.
But
Going from 10 down to 6, most people
But
would be very
as
happy
a
to do that.
coach, I would prefer my client if they were experiencing, say, for example, you had a bit of knee pain or lower back pain around your period, which is
Sure.
totally normal,
Yeah.
going and telling them to go and hit a number
Well,
or continue to try and hit that number.
yeah, but you wouldn't if they came in and had back pain.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. If you mix the combination together, actually, is that week where you're feeling fatigued worthwhile?
Yeah, but you
lifting
wouldn't want to
heavier
add
numbers?
more volume to a person with or both back pain anyway.
It's not adding what I'm saying for myself, Mark, before we have an argument. I'm saying that I would potentially increase volume. Like you just said, I train too bloody hard for anybody to realise. I'm just saying that actually, as much as the science might say that a woman shouldn't, or, not shouldn't, but, can still lift that weight but prior to her period, her bleeding starting, I personally wouldn't go down that route for a general population client. I wouldn't aim, that is the time where you are going to be feeling joint pain, fatigue, and all the rest of it. So maybe aiming for those numbers on those for certain days you don't feel like are not what you should be striving for. And actually just understanding that maybe
and
just moving your body.
and adding more volume would also be counterproductive.
I didn't say, I said I maybe.
No, but I'm just saying, for those that are interested, that potentially if you're feeling that you can't increase the reps or you can't keep the weights
you don't have to do
stable,
anything. How about
you
you
could
don't have to
just
do
reduce.
anything?
You could you could just reduce.
I'm just
the
saying
weight
you could just go and train.
and you could do less reps, and you should just do what you can. And if you even make it to the gym and you're feeling, then that in itself is a huge benefit.
I will say though, but for
And
women,
you just got to take it case by case. Nobody can tell you how you feel or how your body feels. And if you do have a coach, it's always best to have two-way communication with them. And if you are suffering from a little bit of back pain or joint pain, you need to go in and tell your coach before the session that this is how you're feeling and where your energy levels are at, so that they don't disregard that altogether and then just smash you into the ground, which generally most trainers, as it's just our common goal, our common gear, not our common goal, but we like to, you like to make sure everybody gets a good workout, so you want to kind of push them to the higher end.
Yeah, but majority of people that we're probably talking to right now, you probably don't have a coach, and that's completely normal. We're obviously online coaches, so we're obviously going to talk about coaching, but I'm just saying, if you want to, exercise shouldn't be something where you feel like you constantly need to push yourself in it. The reason I say this is because there's different goals when it comes to exercise. And if you are around and you're just wanting to exercise for your mind and to feel good, that is perfectly fine. And if you are going around a period, you don't feel necessarily like doing much, you're going for a brisk walk on a treadmill or going and just doing a light full body workout.
Don't put heavy expectations on yourself, just do what you can, just do what you can.
Yeah, I mean, exercise has been proven to help. Look, this is not everybody again, but a large percentage of women going through them, bleeding, it is shown to really help. Stuff like swimming has been proven to be like very, very beneficial for going, when you're going through your menstrual cycle or bleeding phase. So yeah, look, like I wouldn't say go and jump into a HIIT workout, jump about all over the floor and do everything
Yeah, I
hectic.
guess that's, yeah, I mean,
But then I also wouldn't say go and deadlift your absolute PB.
no,
If you
no,
can, like I've PB'd in my bleeding phase, but
you
I definitely
can,
not in my
you
luteal
certainly can,
phase.
but it's a case on case,
Yeah.
individual. Like some people can feel a certain way and just muscle their way through it, regardless of how they feel. Does that make it right? No. Does that make it wrong? No, it doesn't. It just depends on the individual. Go in, see yourself as ticking off a self-care habit, even if you've arrived at the gym or doing some form of movement through walking or gardening or household chores. As long as you're kind of adhering to some level of movement, you shouldn't put too much of a emphasis or you on being perfect, or put high expectations on yourself for achieving certain things when your body's going through such vast changes in hormones
Yeah,
on
so
a
I
day-to-day
mean,
basis. And it's really hard for men to really understand these changes, and we obviously, because we don't go through them, we not
I
disregard
think
them, but
men
we don't
see. I think a
see.
lot of men do
You
disregard
don't.
it.
Yeah, I
Like it's always
appreciate
been like
that.
taking the piss out on like a birthday card of like a woman being extra hormonal,
Yeah.
or like having a hot flush. Sometimes you can see the funny side in it. Sometimes you literally cannot.
No.
Like I would say, I'm in that mood right today. Like literally. But I think if you are choosing to be with a woman,
Yeah, you should have some
you're in a
understanding,
relationship,
because it just makes
you-
life so much easier when you know.
Okay, Mark,
And
you
you
just said
can-
you avidly like winding me up around my
Yeah,
period, so
but
that's
because it's
not
for
understanding,
entertainment
is it?
value.
It's not entertaining,
I find it
Mark.
funny, but it's
Do you know
fine.
what I imagine when you say that?
Yeah,
None of it's got romance in it.
stabbing me in the face
Stop,
with
okay,
a knife.
okay,
No,
somebody's
I'm
going to knock on our
joking.
door for domestic abuse at this rate. Can we just stop?
I can defend myself. Yes, but
I
it
can
does.
defend
It
myself.
does make your life that much easier as coming from a man, once you understand,
As I'm saying,
these
if you,
adjustments, because then you can obviously be very helpful.
no, you're not helpful. Nothing about a man
Except
and a
for
woman going through a
annoying
period is helpful. If anything, you're like, oh, really?
I get you the hot water
No,
bottle for your tummy.
When have you ever bought me a hot water bottle?
All the time.
If you're listening to this, don't believe that Mark fucking brings me a hot water bottle.
Roses.
Loads of fucking roses. When was
Yeah.
the last time you bought
Turkish
me flowers?
delight.
I don't like Turkish delight, so here we go. Like you're getting all of the boxes crossed right now, not ticked. If you are a woman and you're married, if you're a man and you are married to a woman, or you're in a relationship, a partnership with a woman,
Yeah.
you should
Mm-hmm.
spend a little bit of your time, reading about something. Doesn't need to be much. It's not a book.
Yeah.
It could be just literally a leaflet.
Our
that
Instagram.
our Instagram.
Plugging our work.
Plugging our work. Do you know what I mean? We're the least plugging people.
We
It's
don't
actually.
plug.
We just don't plug anything other than
No
just
plugging or pegging happens.
pegging. What do you mean pegging?
Yeah, it's a
I
It's a
said,
joke.
this is a male joke,
It's
is
a
it?
joke,
Yeah,
it's a
like. But no, I think if you are, then please, your partner might be on a contraceptive pill, which sometimes makes things a lot easier for women to manage. But I don't think it's necessarily the best answer for a lot of people. But you are going to see whether or not a woman is on a contraceptive pill. You are going to see those changes in mood, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And it's about time that you realised that women go through this, and that if you're wanting to have the best relationship when it does happen every month,
Keep it smooth.
keep it smooth. And what
Yeah.
the fuck do you mean by keep it smooth?
Yeah, just by being mindful to your partner's adjustments and adaptations, you can.
Okay, I wouldn't say we're perfect though, Mark, because we probably
No.
have our biggest arguments when I'm around.
Yeah,
my
obviously, but it's the way. It's just normal.
I think, obviously, I, as I said, I can feel it in myself when I can literally feel it boil inside of me. And I'm like, I'm getting annoyed. I know I'm due on my period, for fuck's sake. Like, don't kill him. But if you are planning on spending a lot of time around women in your life, and you want them to potentially reproduce at some point with your children and all of this, you need to also understand the impact it has on a woman, and that you must be sympathetic towards it. And potentially you're listening to this and you are a man. Well done, you've got this far. But in a workplace also, if you're an employer and you employ women in your, which I hope you do, you know what I mean, unless obviously, it's like,
the
sorry,
1900s.
just gonna, what is this, the 1900s? Well, let's talk about gender pay gap, can we, or not?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, well,
we can. Let's get
get
right into it. Yeah.
You should be aware that your female employees will go through this.
Yeah.
And as a business, you also need to understand if they don't necessarily perform
Yeah,
as well as
managing
they can.
expectations, like Georgia said, like you see it around the workplace, and it is unfair to a certain degree to have expectations. For example, working in a gym environment and expecting your staff to hit X amount of targets or sessions per day.
Oh my God, you could talk
And
about recruitment, hitting
yeah,
a target, like
and
estate agency, anything, sales.
there are
marketing,
moments
everything.
where in any aspect where placing those added expectations on, especially being a male employer, it's very difficult to
Yeah, and I
what's the
think
word?
we'll end it with the fact that, like, as we said, we'll definitely do we're going to be doing podcasts on stuff like, menopause and HRT, obviously hormone replacement therapy, and things that will help women. But, it's going to happen, changes are going to happen throughout the whole of your life.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we should all be prepared for, and also people surrounding us are also prepared for. So
Cognizant.
what was that?
Cognizant.
Well done.
The word
Mark.
of the day, cognizant. I can't spell it because I don't know how to spell.
Dyslexia
At the best of times,
101. Anyway, but that's just a little bit of general chit chat on menstrual cycles. We probably will at some point go into it again.
Yeah. And if you have any questions with regards to anything to do with menstrual cycles, please let us know. Drop us an email or a DM on Instagram or any social platform. And we'll be more than happy to point you in the right direction.
Yeah. So thanks for listening today, guys. We'll be back with episode 9 briefly. Next week. Yeah, we'll be back. Anyway, thanks for listening, and we will speak to you soon. Bye.